Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today on the 11th of May. We have a very interesting topic to talk about, which all of us on the panel are very, very passionate about. So I just wanted to take some time to do some introductions, and then we'll get underway and start having a chat about mental health and suicide awareness within the sectors that we specialise in. So just to make some introductions, Cleo, would you like to introduce yourself and explain why you're so passionate about this and where you come from?
Hi everybody, thank you Kelly, and thank you for inviting me on today. I am Cleo. I'm the Wellness Studio Manager in our Dublin studio, which is where I am today. Not in the jungle, I've lots of foliage behind me. I'm the Wellness Studio Manager, but I'm also an executive coach, and I have a background in psychology, philosophy and psychoanalysis. And I'm extremely passionate about mental health, and particularly mindfulness-based stress reduction. At the moment, I'm currently working with HR 20% of my time designing a mental health strategy for Well organisation across the UK and Ireland. Some of the things that we're doing is that we're trying to drive culture change, particularly around normalising conversations about mental health in the workplace. So we have a plan, a 1 to 2 year plan about making sure that everybody is trained on how to make sure that the words that we use are encouraging, and that people feel that they can bring their true selves to work on a daily basis and they won't be stigmatised.
Lovely, thank you, Cleo. Gemma, would you like to do an introduction of yourself and where you're from?
Yeah, and I guess I echo quite a lot of what Cleo said. So I'm Group HR Business Partner for Chapman, relatively new to the role, but with that, I've just been enabled to share my real passion for wellness, well-being, and really honestly, we're in the infancy of our journey, which hopefully we'll get to talk about a little bit later on. But what I just want to reassure anybody that's here, whatever stage of your journey, it's okay, we're all in it together, and it's our passion that builds it. And Salome will mention too, it's when we join forces, when we attend things such as these webinars, when we network, we become much better, and we remove the stigma associated with anything that really shouldn't be there. And you know, it's okay not to be okay. We're very happy with those, comfortable with those words now, but we have to make it a genuine belief that our colleagues know that we mean that. So that's part of, you know, our passion and making that right.
Thank you, Gemma. And that's a nice intro actually into your colleague and partner in crime. Salome, would you like to give an introduction as to what you do as well within the company and your passion behind the subject we're talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I'm Salome. I'm the head of operations and lead on wellbeing and pastoral care at Chapman Beauty College. So we've been training beauty therapists at Chapman since 1976. So we've been doing that for a very long time. We're working with yourselves at iTech for 5 years. Over the last few years, we've really noticed the picture changing of the students that come to us, and firstly their awareness that they already have of their own mental health, but also we're aware of what they're not aware of. So we're trying to help raise for themselves, both as young people moving into the world, moving into the beauty industry, and how they can look after themselves, but also how then that role passes on to their clients. So we know that when you go for a beauty treatment, when you go to have your hair cut, often that's somebody that you will talk to as your beauty therapist or your hairdresser. So we want to really help our students in their initial training phase to be confident that they know how to have those conversations and how to support the people that come to them.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really good, thank you. Tom, finally, sorry, over to you.
So, excuse me, sorry. I founded Alliance Barber Collective back in 2015 because I lost a friend to suicide in 2014 and was completely unaware that he was struggling. It was meant to be a one-off project, but I very quickly realised that actually as hairdressers and barbers, we're in an amazing position. It's been talked about and joked about forever that we are therapists or counsellors or poor man's psychiatrists. And whether we like it or not, we're doing these things anyway. We're looking after our communities. And I realised that actually as as an industry, we're front facing into the communities, we're reaching the unreachable. 72% of people who take their life have had no contact with mental health in the year before they end their life, and but they've probably had a haircut or had a beauty treatment, and it's a safe environment where people feel comfortable to open up and talk because of the license to touch, the intimacy, the trust. I mean, there's not many people who run their fingers through your hair or stroke your beard or I've been paid to hold a cutthroat razor at someone's throat. There's not many people you trust to do that, and they find it relaxing. We're in an amazing position, and that led to me creating Barber Talk and Hair and Beauty Talk training, where we're not trying to turn the hair and beauty professionals into psychiatrists or therapists or anything like that, but we aim to train them to recognise the signs that someone may be struggling, what kind of questions that we can ask, good questions that give that person the opportunity to talk, and then how to listen well with empathy without judgment, and finally how to help them find the help they need, essentially bridging the gap between the communities that we serve and the resources that are available.
Thank you, Tom. So everyone's kind of given their input into why they're here today, so I just want to share why I'm here today. So mental health and suicide awareness is something that I hold very close to my heart, and over the years I've watched a number of friends and family struggle with situations that they're in, whether it's at home or at work. And when I joined VTCT 4 years ago, VTCT and iTech, one of the things that we saw that potentially there was missing was that skills, knowledge and behaviours around talking to people. You know, we work under the subject matter experts within the people services, and if anybody should be talking about this at the moment, it should be us. You know, we should be helping people who are out there. You know, we've been in a pandemic. We should be able to talk about these things. Our lives have all been turned upside down. And what we want to do today by bringing together this amazing panel was just talk, because sometimes that's enough just to talk, just to say it's okay. As Gemma said earlier, it's okay. We're all in the same situation. And this is really important to what we do as an awarding body, but also as employees and employers. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to talk through a couple of things that we think are really important as a panel, to have that conversation. Hopefully that will spark some interesting questions from you guys who are attending the webinar. And we can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day today during Mental Health Awareness Week to listen to us chat. But yeah, please don't hold back. If there are any questions that you have, fire them through. We are going to have a Q&A session at the end of our chat today. So I suppose to kick things off, we've got to talk about the elephant in the room, which is obviously the impact of COVID on the people services and the wellbeing, obviously within this kind of area of expertise that we all work in. So I think, Cleo, if you want to, because you're in a slightly different situation when you're based geographically, it would be really good just to kind of start the conversation, if you're happy to, about, you know, the impact that you've seen hands-on yourself.
Absolutely. So I would regularly teach mindfulness for our organisation at work. So once a month, I offered my services as a mindfulness practitioner to deliver mindfulness, and I was not quite sure whether everybody would want to do it, but it really opened my eyes from all the different parts of the company, like from the distribution centre, from, you know, marketing, and people were reaching out to me saying that they were really struggling, you know. So that led me to think, well, maybe what I could do is share it with the hairdressing community, because I'm a hairdresser first and foremost. I trained in Tony and Guy. Myself and Tom were talking about this, and I remember, you know, it's not the most talented hairdressers that are the busiest. It's the ones with the best people skills. It's the ones that can say, how are you really? That remember what someone said the last day, that remember that they were struggling, and that they remember to ask. And they're the people that are busiest because they have the best interpersonal skills. So one of the things that I did was I was recording short videos about mindfulness-based stress reduction, and I put them on my Instagram account. And I was just overwhelmed with people reaching out to me going, you know what, I listened to that before bed. I'm really struggling at the moment. I'm finding it really hard. Because ego aside, where you're like, oh, you know, should I do it? It really was making a difference. And being able to connect with someone is so important. And as a coach, one of the best tools I ever learned, and God, I've learned countless tools about asking questions, but to ask someone, how are you? And then they'll say, yeah, I'm grand, you know. How are you really? And then ask it and ask it again. And if someone has ever asked you how you are twice, something inside you comes from your gut, and you feel like, I need to respond, and I need to genuinely respond to the person, because they're really looking into me and asking me, how am I doing? It's not like, you know, how are you is like a way of saying hello. So the first time you ask it, you're not going to get anything. Ask it again, and then ask it with intent, maybe the third time, how are you really? And it makes such a difference. And for all of the beauty therapists and the hairdressers and the barbers that are listening to us out there, I can't echo what Tom said enough. You get to touch their faces with kinetic energy. So, you know, and we talk about some of the ways to soothe anxiety is by rubbing your hands together and just touching your face, because it brings us back to when our mother or our father or someone paternal to us stroked our faces. So it's really powerful. So like what Tom said about running your hands through someone's hair, you're in such a brilliant position to reach out. Because a lot of the time, one of the biggest killers we know is loneliness. We are social animals. We are designed to interact with people and be connected. So one of the 5 parts, the 5 points of well-being is staying connected. And if you don't have that, if you're working at home on your laptop, or you're not seeing anybody, or you're self-isolating, it really plays havoc with people's mental health. So if you can't see somebody, actually just messaging them and saying, let's just have a catch up, you know, and being aware of people that are single, that are at home, that aren't getting to have the connection. You know, think of all the old people. We talk about loneliness being a killer. It's the same for young people as well. And not getting outside. One of the biggest things we're doing as a company is trying to encourage people to take, because if you're back to back with meetings, to take 10 minutes and go outside. I put up a post yesterday and I was like, if you're mad busy in the salon, go outside, look at the sky, just literally feel for a minute the air on your face, feel, what can I feel, you know, do I feel like, you know, like the wind blowing, what can I smell, what can I hear, what can I see, and just orientate yourself to the here and now, because I'll pass over now, but one of the biggest things with mindfulness is the awareness that we have a tendency to live in the past or worry about the future. And when we go into the past, it can cause us to be quite melancholy and feel quite depressed, because we don't go nice places. Sometimes you do, but a lot of times you go, God, you wince and you remember old scripts or old scenario, or you fast forward into the future and you imagine things that need to happen. Knowing that is powerful, because you can just go, hang on a minute, where was I? And then just drop back into right here and now. And the most powerful way to do that is, what can I hear? What can I see? What can I smell? What can I taste? And then just, if you have to do that 500 times a day, it's 500 times that you're in the present moment. Passing over. Sorry.
Oh, that was brilliant. Thank
Talk about
you. No, it's really helpful. Salome, from your point, obviously, COVID's had a huge impact on what you do and with the delivery with students and how everything's had to change. How have you found that's impacted, you know, the wellbeing within the people services?
So yeah, obviously it's been a really tough year for our students. Some of them actually, we do a very intensive course. So Chapman does a year-long course, which is full-time, with an awful lot packed into it, with a guaranteed job at the end. But it's so intensive. We kind of describe it like beauty boot camp. And traditionally, it's been very much about learning how to go in and be a practicing therapist, maybe doing 8 hours of treatments back to back in a day. Very hard work. And then we're adding in more things into our course, which is fantastic. But we really noticed, even before COVID, the impact of that on the students and how they just needed a bit of a release valve, really. So when COVID came along, we were already putting in a lot of additional support strategies, creating just spaces where students could go and have a little bit of time out, but also working a lot more on their self-awareness, what they were bringing, how they were working together with other students, because it's kind of a pressure cooker type environment. So we were trying to kind of make it really okay to speak about how they were feeling, which wasn't necessarily there so much before. It was very much like, you know, just kind of get on, get through to the course, get to the end. I've got a background as a yoga teacher, so we've been integrating yoga and mindfulness sessions. So where we can, we try to do sessions before they do their exams, picking up on what Cleo was saying. It's very much about positive psychology, very much about focusing on where they want to be, focusing on the here and now. I do a lot of breathwork exercises with the students. So it's kind of a two-way thing with the continuum of mental health. It's about recognizing where somebody is struggling, helping them recognize that maybe they're struggling and maybe they didn't even realize they were, and giving them that space. So I'm trained as a mental health first aider. All the team have been trained with mental health awareness, just so that we recognise that actually just the simple act of listening can be a complete game changer for somebody. And you may not get a response. You may not get, oh, well, actually, this is what's going on, and a big outpouring, but just recognising that where they're at is okay. I read this lovely quote yesterday. I don't actually know who it's from, but it said, everyone is still healing from things they don't speak about, so be kind. And that really resonates with one of the core messages that we have in the college, which is, whilst we're all dealing with our own stuff, actually just recognizing that other people have this much that you see and this much that you don't see, and we all have to be so respectful of that and not assume anything. So that's kind of the culture that we're trying to embed. So yeah, so there's the recognition of where things aren't necessarily working, and then also the promotion of positive, all the positive psychology techniques, and actually taking that continuum onto the positive side, where rather than saying, well, we're suffering with mental health, what we're doing to actually promote positive mental health, which is relatively new in the field of psychology. And I think that's so important as well, is spanning both sides.
Obviously, you started your work before the pandemic, and how was it during and now for you guys within the Lions Barber Collective? Because you must have seen that things have heightened quite extensively for you, and the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, before I start on that, can I just say that both of you just spoke amazing stuff on the positive side of things. And I know we talk about it's okay not to be okay, but actually it's not okay not to be okay. And those positive things that we're talking about, the ways of teaching people the tools of how to deal with their self and deal with their mental health and bring them back into the moment is so important now. And I think we've done a lot about talking about mental health. Everyone's talk about it. But the problem is, if you talk about it and people don't respond well, or people don't respond well to you, it's really damaging. And we're talking about it and no one knows what to do. It's actually quite a dangerous space to be in. So it's amazing just to hear that you're doing those things already with the students and with Weller. I think it's just fantastic. Anyway, I think with the Lions Barber Collective, I've seen the difference in the 5 years that I've been doing this. There's people are far more open about mental health. I think pre-pandemic, you wouldn't be able to just go up to somebody and say, how's your mental health been? Post-pandemic, I think you can do that to most people, because I think we've realized that actually we all have mental health, we all have a brain, we all have disappointment, we've all been let down, whether you've been working the front line or furloughed, it's affected everybody at some point. And I think that is, for me, a little bit of a silver lining to the big dark COVID cloud, is that actually people are now realizing that we've all got mental health. I don't know how we could ever think it wasn't that way before, but that's a really good thing that's happened from it. And I'm a little bit blessed through lockdown, because it enabled me to stop traveling around doing my platform work and education and stuck in an airport somewhere by myself, 7 hours delay with no Wi-Fi, no battery, and I've been able to be at home with my family and do those amazing things for my family. And look, I live in a nice place, but I've been able to focus on the Lions Barber Collective for the last year, and we've trained hundreds and hundreds of hair professionals and beauty technicians and beauty therapists, in lockdown, and the reach that they will have coming out of that will just be incredible. I think there's some amazing things coming up. And I think it's just amazing that we've got these people together here, all of us together here, taking mental health seriously, and the beauty industry taking it seriously, because I feel that we are the secret, we are the key to unlocking looking after the nation's mental health, because everybody can access a beautician, a therapist, a barber, or whatever that may be. It's accessible to everyone. It's on every single high street, whether you're a tiny village or a big city. We are affordable to everybody, the different levels, most people, and it's a non-stigmatized, safe place to be. So if we can train all the hair professionals, we look after the hair professionals, then we can look after the nation.
I totally agree. I mean, for myself, I think one of the things during the pandemic was the coping strategies that you have in place to deal with day-to-day stuff all goes out the window. Everything that you had that could get you through a challenging day at work or at home or whatever, all went out the window. And we all had to start from scratch, not knowing what was going to happen next, or what was around the corner, or all of this kind of stuff. So I think you're right to hear that there are so many changes being made to actually encourage positive mental health, and not just concentrating on there's a challenge with mental health. We know there is, right? And it's forefront of everybody's minds at the moment. But actually to have a conversation like this, saying it's all right, we all recognise it. We've all had our down days and our wobbles and whatever else we want to call them, but actually recognising the positives in it, actually being able to see it in yourself. So one of the things that really resonated with me was I had one of our colleges contact me to say that students who were taking our mental health qualification had actually been able to recognise in themselves that they needed help. Now, that's huge to have students say, no, I've got a challenge here, you know, taking this qualification to actually help me to recognise it in others has actually helped me recognise it in myself. And that to me is a huge step forward. And I know, Gemma, the work that you're doing within HR and trying to, you know, embed that within what you're doing. Do you want to talk about that? Because I think that that's something that's really key from a large employer's point of view, the work that you're doing to actually recognise the positives and the negative side of all of this.
I think it starts with exactly what you were just saying. It's facilitating. So it's talking on a group perspective, talking about the restrictions, reopening, not reopening, going into this tier system, coming out of the tier system. Our colleagues go on such a roller coaster, as do the business. And I think when we think about getting our hair cut, when we think about going for a treatment, you know, just us here, think about how we feel, think about the reactions when we sit in the chair. We put our cape on, our protective cape, where we go into the safe zone and talk about anything and everything, things that we don't talk to our families about. So that's one element. But from a colleague perspective, it's how they feel going in to do that close contact treatment. And as a business, we have to think about the wider implications. So as you said, Kelly, it's about facilitating. So we facilitated that by a very short questionnaire. We're in the infancy, so we're using the tools that we have at our fingertips, a survey. So we asked if colleagues had a support network. Some colleagues said no, which is heart-wrenching. So that puts us onto a different path. We asked how they felt about our COVID secure measures, and you know, we can pay lip service to those. We can put a poster up. We can say we're COVID secure, but do our colleagues really know that we are genuinely doing everything that we can? So that was part of the communication that went out. And we had responses back from colleagues saying that they had family members that were shielding, that were living with them. They'd had knock-on effects of not being able to go to a funeral of a loved one. You know, you name it, it's out there, and the breadth is so wide. So we facilitated that communication, that open channel to say, you know, come and give us the information. And you know, Tom said, it's great getting the information. What do we do with it? Are we comfortable? So that's the next element of our journey. And this all comes with the senior team, the heads of department, really believing in our passion to do better, to train better, to signpost better, for our colleagues to be in a zone where they can raise their concerns, where managers can ask 3 times. That's something that's afforded to me by the CEO of Champneys. And now, as I have my conversations, when he asks me the second time, I say, I'm really good right now. And then he knows that he doesn't have to ask me the third time, but he will always do that. And, you know, sure as anything, I always say on the first occasion, yeah, great, thank you, because it's a courtesy thing, isn't it? So how we get our managers to do that, and something that I'm really passionate about, you know, who checks the checker? So there's such a huge element that it's just so wide, and you know, we have to take it slowly, communicate that you're doing it slowly, but what you do it well and mean it.
Yeah, that's really. I've just had a question come through, and I wouldn't normally do this, but it's a question I think we probably should cover. So I've just had someone ask. I think someone I know may be struggling, but I have no idea how to help. How can I help them open up? Tom, how would you help that individual? You know, what's your advice that you would give somebody they can see that somebody is struggling, but they have no idea how to start that conversation with them? You know, how would you advise them?
You know, I think it's already been mentioned a couple of times already by everybody on this panel, and I think it is literally asking them, how are you really feeling? And they're using their name and making it personal, and think about making asking them a question that would make you feel comfortable to open up. And it's not even, I don't even really think it's about the question. I don't even think it's really about ask, because everyone knows you can ask them how are you feeling today. It's more about, we don't ask those questions because we're scared of the response that we get, and what do we do with that information once we get it. If they say, if we ask them how are you really feeling today, Kelly, how are you really feeling, are you okay, and you say no, I'm not, I'm really struggling, then we just go into panic mode because we don't know what to do, and we try and fix and we try and solve everything. Because especially in the hair and beauty industry, people come in looking rubbish, we send them out looking glamorous, we fix and we solve everything and off they go. But actually, when it comes to mental health, nobody wants to be fixed, no one wants to be solved. Ask them that question and listen to them. Just listen to them, give them that platform. Don't be scared of silences. Don't tell them that you know how they feel, because you don't know how, we don't understand, we don't know. But yeah, so even if you don't know what to say, look, I really don't know what to say by now, but I'm here to listen for you. I'm not going to judge you. Just give them that platform. And often it's about giving them the platform to get this, whatever it is, out of their head. Because we all know, I'm sure we've all had nights where we lay in bed worrying about stuff that really probably don't need to worry about, but as long as it's in our head, it's much worse than when we get it out. And that old saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. So I would suggest asking them, seriously, how are you feeling? You can talk to me, I'm here for you, and listening. Don't be scared of silences. Don't try and fix and solve anything. Don't tell them that you understand. If you don't know what to say, so you don't know what to say, but let them know you're a safe space. Also, take a look at things like hubofhope.co.uk or mypickle.org. They're both directories which will give you signposting to different resources in your area. Hub of Hope is mental health related resources, and MyPickle is more situational, so like financial or gambling or whatever. But they're great resources as like a one-stop shop, so you can have them in your back pocket should you need to. But don't try and fix or solve it too quickly. Let them offload first.
I think the key thing is
I might jump in here. One of the biggest things that I was asked during lockdown, from the first one we reopened after the last lockdown, was with the Freelance Hairdressing Association. So we would do a lot of work with them, and it was on Zoom, and they asked me to come on and do something around mindfulness. And one of the biggest questions they were saying is, how do I speak to someone who's lost someone that they love? Or how do I speak to someone who's suffering with their mental health? Because exactly like what you said, Tom, it's like, I don't know what to say. And it's like, well, you don't have to say anything, you just have to listen. So what I would say is, and it's something we do in coaching a lot, is if you ask a question, let it hang in the air. We're just we're in an always on world, we're incapable of sitting still. So when you ask a question, just let it sit there, even if no response ever comes, because as humans, we're incapable of not answering. So the longer the silence goes, the person, while the silence is happening, is processing. And it might feel like an eternity, it could only be 2 minutes, but they're actually thinking about it. So just let it sit for a couple of minutes. And if they say something and you don't know, the best thing to say is, that's really tough. That sounds really tough. I can really see that you're going through a lot. And again, as everybody has echoed, the worst thing you can say is, I know what you feel. And we have a tendency to do this story tapping, where what we do is, and there's a book called by Celeste Hadley called We Need to Talk. It's a really good book. I'd recommend anyone to read it. And she talks about when we're uncomfortable and someone says, my father has died, I'm going through a really hard time. We say, I remember when my dad died, da, 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 da. And what we're doing is we're emotionally hijacking, because we're not comfortable with their distress. So what we do is we make it about something we are comfortable with, which is ourselves. So we change the story over to us. What we're doing is we're not sitting with the person. So you don't ever have to have the answers. You don't have to fix it. You just have to listen. But if you're stuck for something to say, you can just say, it's really tough. And for anybody who's listening out there, and you might be going through, your own hardships, and you're worried about, getting help, just to disclose, for somebody, I suffered with OCD really, really for a long time, and didn't talk about it, because OCD is one of those secretive things, not the checking, and it was more about the ruminations. And through mindfulness-based stress reduction and other things, I can have a completely different life now. So just know that if you are suffering, it's a moment in time. It's not forever. It's just right now, and that's it. If anybody's listening, I really want you to know that.
There is actually
Amazing.
something quite interesting just come through on the chat again. And again, I wouldn't normally do this, but it's a really interesting question of, can reassurance of what someone says to you about their mental health and that it will be kept confidential help? I mean, what's your feelings on that, Salome? Because obviously you're working with students, and that is something from a confidentiality point of view, you know, the safeguarding. What's your advice around this? You know, do you think it is reassuring, or do you think it's actually something that you need to be honest with them, and depending on what the challenges are?
So the general rule is that confidentiality is key. The only exceptions for that, and this goes across all kind of contexts, is if you feel that anybody is going to cause harm to themselves or somebody else. But yeah, absolutely, confidentiality is absolutely crucial in terms of people being able to open up and being able to talk and express themselves. I think one of the things that's coming out here is we assume that somebody might have a problem and is talking a lot. Sometimes you find that they don't, but just making information available. I have an example where, you know, we made some little cards available for a little chat line. So it was a text chat app.
Yeah.
And I think with young people particularly, that's much more a comfortable place for them to be in. So rather than ringing somebody and actually having to verbalize and have a conversation, because we're not used to using telephones anymore, this particular student recognized that she was really struggling and she was at risk, and she used this text chat and just used that medium to chat. So it wasn't even about having the conversation, it was just about making that available. But yeah, so coming back to the confidentiality, yeah, absolutely, I think that is always reassuring that there's a safe space, which is a phrase which has come out a lot. Gemma, I loved your thing about putting the gown on in the hairdressers, and that being your thing. In yoga we do visualization of, like, you know, a safe space around you, and it's the same thing. It's about creating that place where you can build your strengths, build your positive, and focus on your best self. And if you are sharing that with somebody else, then yes, that needs to extend to that other person.
That sounds like a gorgeous place where you guys work. You're doing amazing work there. I really like the whole ethos.
We're getting there. We're on a journey.
Yeah. I think it is that it's nothing's perfect, nothing's fixed, nothing is done. It's this thing of we're all working on it, and we're all working on it in our own ways, either it's on ourselves or with others that are around us, whether it's in our personal life or at work, or, you know, it's that thing of just being okay to say it's work in progress. It's not fixed. And I think, you know, Gemma, some of the stuff that you've highlighted today in regards to, you are new to the company, and, you know, there's some really exciting initiatives being brought in. But that can be shared in any size business. You know, it can be someone who is a small independent up to large corporations. You know, it's not one size fits all, but taking things from like the conversations we're having today and saying, well, actually, we could implement some of that. That's something that we could do. That's a conversation that we could have within work. That to me is a huge leap forward for any business. It's adapting to what you need and knowing the people that you're working with on a daily basis, or the people that you're socializing with on a daily basis. It's understanding, as you said, you know, it's having that safe place, that place to go and say, actually, no, I'm not all right today. I was yesterday. Today I'm having a down day. Today I actually don't want to be sociable. And it's that thing of recognizing that not to push if someone's saying they're not ready to talk, but it's making them have that reassurance of that it is confidential, and when they are ready, that you are there, you know, whether it's at work or with friends or family. Tom, some of the work that you've been doing, sorry, go on, please.
No, I was going to say that the biggest thing that I've ever done in the whole Lions Bible Collective in the nearly 6 years is just I've publicly told people it's okay to talk to me, like over and over again, on television, on on magazines, on things like this. And actually, because of that, back when we could go out, I couldn't go out for a drink or food in Torquay without somebody coming up to me and saying, "You're the guy that does that." Yes, that's right. And then they just offload on me. And all my friends hated it because I'd be like, "Where the hell have you been, Tom, for the last hour?" And, well, I went to get a drink, and this guy come up to me and told me about his, you know, this and that, he's going through this, and yeah, and actually, you know, and how I feel honoured that people can do that. But it is literally as simple as that, just letting people know that you're a safe space, and that these people are people. I've never met them before, so yeah, that's as simple. It's as simple as that.
I think that does lead on to sorry, Kelly. I think that leads on to another really important factor that a lot of the young people that we see who are choosing this profession are doing so partly because they're interested in the practical side of it, but also because they are people, and they are the type of people that people will talk to. And I know this is something that we've discussed as a panel, that it's so important to be then putting in, what do they do with all this stuff? So being aware of themselves, and then also if somebody discloses, and they might have, you know, quite a serious disclosure come through, what do they do with that, and how they feel safe about managing that information?
That's something that we're actually working on at the moment. I think I told it when we had the talk previous meeting about this. If you're a therapist or a counsellor or a psychiatrist or even a Samaritan, you have to have somewhere to offload afterwards. You can't just go home because you can't keep on taking on everyone's stuff. And at the moment, the hair and beauty industry takes on everybody's stuff, the whole nation's stuff, all day, every day, without even realising that we do it. And that's such a skill that the hair industry can do that. But we need to have something in place for them to offload to. And there is a proposal that's been in Parliament, something we're working on here at Lions Bible Collective. I did send everything out again yesterday after the local elections. But what we're trying to do is create a helpline for the hair and beauty industry to offload and sort of just disclose everything that's been disclosed to them in a confidential way, just to get it off. And I think sometimes in the hair and beauty industry, we get called gossips. And I think because of that, hairdressers and barbers are scared to share something. And there's a big difference between saying, oh, did you know that Steve is having an affair with Jane? And no, like, from saying, do you know what, I actually had a guy in today and he was telling me he's having an affair, and it was really damaging him, and I had to take that on, and I felt bad about that as well. And there's a big difference between that, and it is, I think sometimes we think that we can't disclose. Yeah, that's what they think that is disclosing, but actually it's not. We need to be able to do that. So the hairline thing, hopefully, fingers crossed, that's been sent back out to the MPs today, that we can get some funding so we can have a helpline in place for the hair and beauty industry, run by volunteers in the hair and beauty industry that are trained to listen.
That's fantastic. I'd love to take this offline. This is such an amazing panel with fantastic resources. That's something I'd love to do in Ireland, and particularly some of the stuff that you guys are doing in Champneys. And I'm going to rob that, the one with the cape, from my students. I really one of the things that I got to work on was introducing, and we teach a course called Master Colour Programme. It's like our expert level course, and we have a whole section in on mental health around mindfulness. So about how not to personalise clients' distress or anger, and how to talk to people. Because, and I really love that everybody touched on the fact that this generation are used to getting the deepest, darkest secrets from someone from text message, but put them in front of a client, they don't know what to say. So it's nearly like giving them a script of, and then if somebody doesn't like something, that they don't, it doesn't crush them and make them feel like, you know, so it's like, how can they be more about understanding what's about them and what's not. So I do a lot about the locus of control. So what's in my control, what's not in my control. I think that's really powerful as well. And any of this that we can empower them with, particularly like what you guys mentioned about the training programs, I just think it's so much a benefit, because I think when I was training, you know, and Irish people, they talk about the gift of the gab. We didn't have phones, so we were just naturally more chatty, you know, so you nearly have to give a script now, which is okay, but just knowing to do it.
There's an interesting question just come through which says, and I can relate to this. I love being a listening ear for my clients, but I sometimes get overwhelmed. Do you have any tips for managing this and making sure I don't pour from an empty cup?
That's one of my favourite quotes, don't pour from an empty cup. As I've got a client say that to me many moons ago, and I didn't know what he was talking about to start off with, because he'd taken on everything. But I think it's really important to have that support group, isn't it, around you, someone that you know that's safe, that you can offload to, whether that be your friends, your partner. You know, I think it's difficult in the hair and beauty industry because we're on our feet all day working, and we get home and we collapse, and they don't really want, you've been talking to people all day, so you're kind of all talked out. So I think potentially the best thing you can do is actually look at support groups. Maybe look at something like hubofhope.co.uk, and that'll give you a list of all the resources. You put your postcode in that are closest to you, and have some of them. They're there for us just as much as they are for anyone else.
also one of the scientific ways to increase your happiness. I think, Salome, you mentioned about positive psychology. Martin Seligman is like my hero, and
me too.
Yeah, I've done the Yale course, and I'm doing the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, and it's about the science of well-being. And one of the biggest ways that we can increase our happiness, and it actually links into what we're talking about, is journaling. So if you don't have somebody to offload to, and it's a huge secret, just literally doing a brain dump or an emotional dump into a journal is really powerful. And at the end of it, setting your intentions. What would I like to see happen as a result of this? What are my best wishes for myself in this situation? What do I need right now to be happier? And the best thing about journaling is when you write something down, when you go to bed at night, your subconscious uploads it and it starts to problem solve in the background. So it's like how kids, when they're learning how to play a piano, they just can't get it, but they go to sleep that night and their brain works out how to do it, and the next morning they can. So don't underestimate the power of keeping an old-fashioned diary. Like, it's really,
one of the things that we've done at the college is in the first couple of weeks we do an introductory mental health awareness session, and I've created a mental health first aid kit, and all the students are given it. And one of the things that's in there is a little notebook with one good thing written on the front, and I talk about gratitude practice, and that simple practice of switching your brain chemistry, so that rather than it hanging on to negative stuff, which it has a tendency to do, and there are lots and lots of reasons why it does that, dating back to the history of mankind, but we can deliberately tell our brains to focus on something positive by just picking something that we're grateful for every day, and it has such a powerful impact if you do it.
It's funny, I actually did that last night. It's funny how you have these things, you can have so many things that are going on that are amazing in your life, and one thing that's negative, and that can throw you off kilter completely. And I was struggling with it, kept no matter what happened, it's kept on popping to the forefront of my mind. So literally, like you said, last night before I went to bed, I sat down and I wrote down all the positive things that are going on in my life, all the things that are coming up, all the amazing things that are going on. And then I actually listened. We work with a lady who does like hypnotherapy, positive meditation, sleep stuff, and she did us one a while back called it's called Together We Are Stronger, and it's on Spotify, and it's a sleep story. So anyone, that's completely free obviously on there, so people can go and listen to that. So I literally put that on, listen to it, and just reinforces positive messaging. I think it is so powerful, underestimating how powerful it is, really.
Yeah.
One of the things I heard from one of the employers that we work with, which I thought was quite a nice idea, it may not be able to be done every day, but it was a bit of a wash-up session at the end of each work day, 5 minutes, just a sense check-in with the team. How are you doing? And it gives everybody a chance that if they have come across something that they are concerned about, or somebody shared something, they don't need to use names, they don't need to, kind of go into that devil in the detail side of it. But what they can do is say, as you said, actually I had someone in today that's really struggling. I think their other half's having an affair, and just sharing that, and actually hearing that other people in the salon or within, the spa have actually had similar or conversations. And it's just that, isn't it? It's that just having that space that it's safe for the therapists or the hairdressers or the barbers to actually say, I've faced this today, and they're not looking again for a solution to it. It's just sharing potentially what you went through that day with a colleague or with your manager or with the owner or something like that. I thought that was quite a good one. I thought that was something, and it doesn't need to be done every day. It could, it could be a once a week thing or something like that, but just having that space for 5-10 minutes as a team to say, actually, no, I had a really rubbish day today. And actually, it doesn't even need to be that they've been told something themselves. They may have had something happen in their own lives that actually don't necessarily want to go into the detail of, but, I've had a really rubbish day. I had a really angry customer who actually was in pain, but they were, slightly verbally abusive because they just didn't know how to verbalize what was wrong. And, and it hurt me as a person that they were being like that towards me. Just being able to talk about something like that in that way makes such a difference. And I think there's something that we need to encourage people to do more. Don't bottle it up. Don't think you can take on the world on your own. Yes, as a breed, we listen and we're sympathetic, and we have empathy and all of these things, but actually there's some days where you're not yourself, and that's okay as well. You don't, and that's what worries me about our people services that we all work within, is that, as Tom and the others have you've all said, we take on so much as a profession. We listen to everything that's going on, and and you take it quite personally, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be in this industry. You wouldn't be working within these services if you didn't care and you weren't passionate and you weren't a people's person. You just wouldn't be doing it. So I think that time of, you know, having 5 minutes just to talk to colleagues.
Yeah, and there's a lot in there for, especially for trainee therapists, recognizing when somebody's bringing something in, and what's theirs and what's mine and what's yours, and being able to take a step back and go, okay, rather than reacting to what somebody has said or how they are, it's just taking a step and go, okay, what's actually going on for this person, and accepting that it's not anything about me, it's about them, and holding that space for them. And that's a really subtle skill to be able to do.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you say something there, Kelly? I mean, you went silent.
Yeah, I think Tom was about to say something. I was like, just handing over.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say that one of our trustees is Dr. Peter Aitken. He was headed up the mental health at the Nightingale Hospital in London, and they actually implemented like a buddying up system. They called it mental health PPE. So whilst they were the people working in there in the NHS, they were putting on their PPE, that they were partnering up and asking that person how their day was, how they got to work, how was last night, how are you coping with this, what are you feeling today, all those kind of things. So they took that time whilst they were dressing each other in PPE to have that little sort of debrief at the very beginning of the day. And I think that's something that we can quite easily implement into our salons. We don't have to be an expert in anything. It doesn't have to be a mental health first aider. It doesn't have to be, but you could team each other up and just have someone you partner up with in your salon, just check in with each other every morning. How was work? How was the trip to work? How was last night with the kids? I know you were a little bit stressed when you left this. Those kind of little things makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I love that, because the PPE that we've all kind of had to build into our practice is literally a physical barrier between us and the person that we're relating to. So if we can get some way of talking through that process, I love that mental health PPE. Yeah.
One of the things that we do, like, well, with my own team, and this is really portable, anybody can do it in their salons if you're listening, is we do a thing where we ask permission. So we talk about the fact that some of the biggest causes for people feeling a bit anxious is if you don't know if you've upset somebody. You know, in the salon, if someone is off, we have a tendency to personalize it and make it about us, because our brains don't like anomalies and we don't like to not know what's going on. So if somebody is a little off at us, we'll invent a backstory of why that is, even though it mightn't be anything to do with us. So what we do in work is we do a thing called, I'm just temperature checking. That's what we say. I'm temperature checking. Are you okay? Is everything all right? And then the other person will go, actually, no, it's not. I'm just a bit off today because. And then, so we do temperature check and then ask permission and say, I'm using my ask permission card. I'm worried about you. Are you okay? And then they say, totally fine, but you've been given permission to do that. So you could do that in a group meeting, and it'd be like temperature check because best to ask, you know, and then if you're worried about them, you can say, I'm using my ask permission card to check in.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
I just had a question through about the small things that you could do to change to make yourself. It's that kind of being able to have permission to ask. We shouldn't have to have permission, but actually it's quite a respectful thing to do, isn't it? You're not putting them in an awkward, you're saying that permission to check in, permission to just say, how are you doing, what's going on, and all those kind of things. I mean, Gemma, obviously you look at it from a HR point of view, which is slightly different to the way that the rest of us look at things. And I mean, how do you find implementing those kind of things across a company? You know, it must be quite challenging to get people on board and buying into that kind of sense checking, you know, the talk, you know, catching up, making sure everything's okay. How do you go about doing it?
As you said, from a group perspective, you're dealing with all ends of the spectrum. So when we send any communication out, it is making sure that we are respectful to every element of the spectrum. So it is about facilitating an area for those that need it. A recent communication that I sent out, and I use those words temperature check all the time, and within that post it said, you know, we're doing a temperature check, and it was about a survey that's coming, and you know, actually we want to hear what we're doing well, but also we want to hear how we can do things better. So when we send any survey out, like with anything, all of our colleagues have to see where the information is going, what we're doing with it. So once we've collated everything, we host an open meeting to say, right, question 1, here's a summary of what we've got. This was really great feedback. This is what we're going to do. And then everybody is covered. But you have to be so respectful to everyone, whatever the response. And when we said earlier about realizing something in yourself, when we facilitated that conversation, you might sit there and think, I thought I was okay, but actually that does resonate with me. So I'm going to mark that as a no, because I think the company could do something better. And we always share our results with not just the senior team, which are the directors within our business, but every colleague. So like the comms that came out with COVID, it's non-discriminatory. So is our response to mental health, wellness, well-being. We don't, it's not designed to meet one group, it's designed to meet every colleague.
That's fantastic, thank you. And I'm sure that will help quite a few of the people today, so thank you. Another question that's come through for the panel, so you can choose who's going to answer this one. You spoke earlier about the difference between showing empathy and sympathy. Do you have any advice for those of us struggling with balancing sympathy and empathy, or sympathising and having empathy towards the situation that's going on? So I think that's quite a good one for us to touch upon.
I nominate Cleo.
Only because we'd been chatting about this before, but a really good friend of mine, she's a counselling psychologist. I was doing an assignment and I was like, how would you define sympathy and empathy? And she said, well, put it this way. She said, if someone was in the ditch with a broken leg, she said, if you walked by them, you would have zero empathy, and she said, if you got in the ditch with them and said, oh, this is terrible, and got lost in the ditch with them, that's sympathy. Where you kind of go down the rabbit hole with them. Whereas empathy is putting one foot on the ground and the other foot in the ditch and pulling them out. So it's grounding yourself in your own experience and using that. And so empathy is very positive. So it's like what we talked about positive psychology. It's like, I can't imagine how difficult that is. And what support have you got in place? You're not saying what are you going to do about it, because that's a bit tough love, but you can say, and who's supporting you with this? And, can I help with anything? What options have you explored? So for me, and my personal take on empathy is recognizing someone's distress, but also helping them move forward.
That's why you got nominated to answer that question. There you go. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts on this one?
I think that empathy is, very amazingly explained there by Cleo, but I think empathy is more like you kind of relate to that person and you kind of relate with them and you go on the journey with them and you help them, whereas sympathy is more like you look at the issue and look down on them and you're sympathetic towards them, whereas empathy, you're empathetic with them. Do you know what I mean?
There's a great cartoon I've seen which has got somebody that's fallen down. It's a whole ditch, well, same thing. And sympathy has got this character at the top that's kind of looking in and going, oh, it looks awful in there. I'm glad I'm not there. That's sympathy. And empathy is they're kind of getting in and going, okay, this isn't great, but I'm with you. And it's just that knowing that somebody is on your side and you're not alone.
Yeah.
To figure it out.
Yeah, another question that's come through is, how can I signpost somebody that I thought may be suffering with a mental health issue to seek help in a sensitive and compassionate way? I think it's touching on that bit that we touched on earlier of how best to kind of land that. And Tom, you've been doing a lot of support and guidance around how to position that with somebody, especially with the work you've been doing around barbers and men obviously talking to barbers a lot more than they will do their doctor around challenges. So what advice would you give someone in regards to how to signpost somebody, but being compassionate and sensitive about the subject as well at the same time?
I think you've got to, like I said earlier on, you can't jump in too quickly and try and solve the issue. Go, well, they say, I'm really feeling really down. Have you heard about Samaritans? It just feels very dismissive and you're shutting them off. I think you need to listen to them first, try and understand where they're coming from, and you need to make a plan with that person. Again, nobody likes being told what to do. We all we all know what we need to do to sort out anything that's wrong in our life. We're the only ones that really need to do. And also you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. If you can help that person help themselves, that's the way to do it. Have you heard about this? Would you like, shall we call this person? Or have you told your mum about it? I know your mum. Should we give her a call together? Make that plan with that person. Empower them to do it rather than telling them what to do. Because I'm hands up, I don't like being told what to do. I think we all need to find our own solutions, don't we? That's when we work out the best.
Yeah, I think that's so true, that underneath a lot of us really do know what the actions are that we need to take, and either it's a question of feeling scared to do that, or maybe even feeling like we don't have permission to do that, or maybe it's that thing of that's what someone else does. Someone else calls a helpline, someone else speaks to their manager, but not me, because this isn't the thing that's happening to me. So it's bridging that gap, I think.
Yeah,
that it's
simple.
okay to explore.
Yeah, it's like when your parents tell you to do something, and they tell you this is the right thing for you, you need to do this, and you're like, oh, whatever, God, don't want to. But then you talk to your friend about it, and you say, you might even mention what they told you to do, and they go, yeah, that's a really good idea, and you go, oh yeah, that is a good idea. But it's that different when you're being told what to do, and when you realise it yourself, you're helped to realise something. That's the way to signpost it. And remember again that you can lead a horse forward, but you can't make a drink. It's up to them to then go and make that change or make that decision to contact that help.
Yeah. Just want to link back in on something that Salome said in regards to managers. So I'm writing a course at the moment on soft skills for our management team, and a good relationship with your manager is really critical to good mental health. So for any of the salon managers, salon owners, and in the beauty industry or in barbers, remembering that if someone comes to you and they are suffering with mental health, exactly like what you guys said, and if you say to them, okay, let me get you help, what that's doing is saying, I'm not okay with you to tell me any more about this. And that's critical. So that you do need to get them help, but you need to let them debrief, or to emotionally let it all out first, and then say, well, let's explore what we can do. So what are the options? And then do it that way. Because a lot of the time people get scared and they go, oh, ring the Samaritans, or, oh, have you rang employee assistance program, or have you done this? And really what you're doing is like shutting down the conversation. Sometimes managers worry that if someone discloses to them about their mental health, well, then I know that about them, I can't ask them to do their job. And that's not the case at all. If you're lucky enough that someone brings this to you, it means then that you can be more empathic with their situation. And we know that mental health affects people people just kind of coasting the job or not going to work because of mental health. And if you invest in having these good conversations, it might mean that they're happy coming to work because they feel like they're seen, they're recognised, and they can be their full selves.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's nearly midday and we've been chatting on this panel for nearly an hour, which is phenomenal. And I really hope that everyone who's joined us today takes something away from the conversations that we had, and maybe can change something in a very small way that could have a really big impact on somebody's life. And I can't thank you guys enough to be on the panel, today with me and sharing the information that you have and the ideas and everything. So a huge thank you from everybody at VTCT and ITEC for taking the time today to join us on this webinar, and thank you to the panel members for taking the time to share and tell some honest stories about situations that you've been in and things like that. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you for joining. An hour has gone very, very quickly, I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.